Kevin O'Leary once said something that stops people in their tracks. You can live on $500,000 in the bank and do nothing else to make money. Sounds wild, right? $500,000 doesn't exactly scream financial freedom these days. Most people hear that number and think, that's not enough to retire. But that's where most people get it wrong. Because what Kevin really means isn't about the number itself. It's about what the money does. Kevin isn't the kind of guy who throws out random claims about money. He's a successful investor who spent years living by what he teaches. So when he says you can live on $500,000, he's not talking about parking that cash in a checking account earning 0.5% in interest. He's talking about having that money working for you, invested in a smart, diversified portfolio that grows and generates steady income over time. It's money that's alive, compounding, and building momentum instead of sitting still. And that distinction between idle cash and invested capital is everything. Because here's the truth. Money left sitting in a bank slowly dies. Inflation eats away at it until it's worth less every single year. But invested money has the potential to snowball, to grow faster than prices rise, and to eventually sustain you without you having to lift a finger. That's what Kevin calls reaching the baseline, the point where your money works for you in a noticeable way. It's not full-blown financial freedom yet, but it's where things start to shift. Now let's be real. Living off $500,000 isn't luxury. You won't be flying first class or eating out every night in New York City. It's a modest lifestyle, but it can absolutely work if you structure it right. Kevin's strategy centers on generating income through investments that yield anywhere between 5% and 9% a year. Historically, the S&P 500 has returned about 10% annually before inflation. So those numbers aren't fantasy, they're realistic. If you're earning around 5% a year from your portfolio, that's roughly $25,000 annually. To most people, that doesn't sound like much. And depending on where you live, it might not be. But in the right conditions, it can cover your basic needs. Think about a single person with no debt, no mortgage, and a simple lifestyle in a mid-cost area. Rent is modest, the car's paid off, and they're not constantly chasing luxury. That $25,000 a year stretches a lot further than you'd think. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. And that stability is the first step toward real financial independence. Of course, it's not for everyone. Some people crave simplicity. They find peace in owning less, in not chasing the next big thing. For them, this kind of lifestyle feels freeing. Others see it as restrictive, like constantly having to say no to what makes life enjoyable. But Kevin's point isn't about deprivation, it's about choice. The freedom to live on less because you want to, not because you have to. Financial planners often talk about the 4% rule, meaning you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year without running out of money. Kevin pushes that slightly higher to 5%, depending on your flexibility and market conditions. So if you're working with $500,000, you're looking at somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a year, and those figures line up with long-tested, historically sound strategies. But here's where it gets interesting, because for most people, reaching that $500,000 mark isn't out of reach. Even someone earning an average salary can get there with consistency. If you were to invest about $7,000 a year, that's less than 10% of the median household income, in a Roth IRA earning a market average return, you'd end up with roughly $660,000 after 30 years. Stick with it for 40 years, and you're looking at over $1.4 million. That's the power of compounding quietly working behind the scenes. Now, living on $500,000 is tight, no doubt about it. It demands discipline, planning, and a willingness to live below your means. You can't have a big mortgage, an $800 car payment, or luxury vacations every few months. But the trade-off is time. Time to stop depending on a paycheck and start living life on your terms. Because the truth is, the less you spend, the less you need to achieve freedom. Every time you raise your lifestyle, you raise the bar you have to clear before you can stop working. That new car, that bigger house, that upgraded vacation, each one pushes financial independence a little further away. The key is knowing what you actually want. Do you want luxury or do you want freedom? Because most people don't realize you can't usually have both at the start. That's why Kevin says $500,000 is the baseline. It's enough to survive, but $1.5 million is where you start to live. At that level, withdrawing 5% gives you $75,000 a year. Enough to cover all the essentials, plus a few luxuries. You can travel, dine out, replace your car when you need to, and still sleep soundly at night knowing your money's growing behind the scenes. You're not just surviving, you're comfortable, flexible, and free. And for retirees with Social Security, those numbers look even better. A couple with $500,000 invested could pull in $25,000 a year from their portfolio. And when you add average Social Security benefits, their total income could reach around $73,000 annually. Scale that up to $1.5 million, and you're living on roughly $123,000 a year. Enough to feel genuinely secure and even a little indulgent. So can you really live on $500,000 and never work again? Technically, yes, but it's not about luxury. It's about freedom. The freedom to choose what you do next. Many people who reach that point don't stop working completely. They shift gears. They leave the 9-to-5 grind to start something they love. A small business, a podcast, a creative project. Something that brings purpose instead of pressure. That's the real message Kevin's trying to get across. The number, whether it's $500,000 or $1.5 million, is just a symbol. What matters is what it represents. Control over your time, the ability to say no, and the power to design your life around what actually makes you happy. So maybe it's not so crazy after all. Maybe Kevin's right. You can live on $500,000 and do nothing else. Not because it's easy, but because it forces you to redefine what enough really means. And when you understand that, you realize the goal was never about millions in the first place. It was about freedom, the kind of wealth that lets you wake up every morning knowing you own your time, your choices, and your life. Thanks for watching InvestingFlix, where smart money learns smarter moves. Subscribe for more insights that grow your wealth.